Ruth's daughter called on a Thursday evening with that held-tight voice. Not happy, not sad, just gripped, as if she were holding something in her throat and wouldn't let go. $2,200 for Tyler's knee rehab. Insurance wouldn't cover it. Ruth set down the spray bottle, looked at the seedling trays on her windowsill, and did the math the way she'd once calculated fertilizer per acre. Fast, automatic, merciless. Social Security, minus everything, equaled $90 a month. Tyler needed to run by summer. She didn't know yet that the answer was already growing under the lamp on her kitchen sill. Friends, drop a comment. Where are you from? And does your Social Security check actually last till the end of the month? We'd love to know who's listening. And hit that like button so this story reaches someone who needs to hear it right now. The call came while Ruth Lundgren was misting tomato starts on the windowsill. 20 cups cut from plastic bottles, because peak pots cost $4 a pack, and neighbours threw bottles out for free. In each cup, soil. In each soil, a seed. On each cup, masking tape marked in blue Sharpie. BH24 for Brandywine Heart, her own saved seed from last summer's best fruit. She'd sown them January 20th, same date every year, the way her grandmother had, her mother, and Ruth herself since 14. Mum, I'm calling about Tyler. Cast came off in December, leg healed, but the doctor says he needs rehab. PT, massage, orthotics. Without it, the muscles won't rebuild and he'll limp. He's 14, Mum. He should be running. How much? $2,200. 3 months. Insurance won't touch it. Rehabilitative services not covered under the standard benefit plan. They read me the clause like a verdict. Mum, I'm not asking, just telling. We'll figure it out. Ruth set the phone down and looked at the seedling trays. Figure it out. The phrase she heard every time it meant they wouldn't. Amy was a medical assistant in Denver, $38,000 a year, mortgage $1,100, and figure it out was the family's primary financial strategy. $2,200. Ruth opened the phone calculator. Social Security, $1,540. Property tax and insurance on the house, which Carl had paid off before he died, $240. Medications. Lisinopril for blood pressure, ibuprofen for the knees, melatonin for sleep, though melatonin helped about as well as wishing, but the doctor prescribed it, $340, because after Carl died, his VA supplement vanished, and 2 prescriptions that used to cost next to nothing now cost real money. Groceries. Potatoes, carrots, and onions from the garden. Everything else store-bought. $440. Wet food for Biscuit, who refused dry, $35. Propane, firewood, electric. Mountain winter, the kind that starts in October and doesn't quit until May, $250. Phone, bus fare to the clinic, soap, toothpaste, the odds that don't have a category but always have a price, $145. Remainder, $90 a month. For toothpaste, soap, batteries, bus fare to the clinic, a birthday present for Tyler, her only grandchild, 14, in Denver, whom she saw 3 times a year and who was taller each time. At $90 a month, $2,200 was 24 months. 2 years. Tyler needed rehab by summer. 4 months. She looked at the sill. Biscuit, orange tabby, 11 years old, 1 torn ear from a long-ago fight, philosophical temperament, lay among the cups with a paw dangling, watching her the way cats watch people who've just received bad news. Knowing, unhelpful, warm. Granby, Colorado in January, a town of 2,000 at the edge of the Rockies, quiet, white, frozen so hard the house popped at night. Ruth's place on Elm Street, wood frame, pale blue vinyl siding Carl had put up in 2012, the year before siding prices doubled. Carl died 7 years ago, stroke, in March, when snow still covered everything. Ruth didn't remember the hospital. She remembered the dripping, standing on the porch after the ambulance left, hearing snowmelt hit the metal awning, thinking that spring would come without him, and she'd sow the starts and cover the greenhouse alone. Both of those things turned out to be true. 7 springs since. Each one she grew 200 plants, 5 tomato varieties, 2 peppers, cucumbers, and gave them away. 30 to Donna over the fence, 20 to Patty on Elm, 15 to Vicky from church, the rest to anyone who asked. 34 years at the County Agricultural Extension, she'd raised seedlings for the demonstration plots, thousands upon thousands, and never sold a single one, because the starts belonged to the programme, and then they belonged to her, and what's yours, you give. There are women who've worked with their hands all their lives, and are certain those hands aren't worth anything special, because nobody ever paid them more than a government salary. Donna came Saturday, through the back gate, never the front door, because Donna believed front doors were for strangers, and friends came through the gate, yelling, "Ruth, you home?" Donna was 2 years younger, retired postal worker, with hands like a wrestler's and a voice that carried to the end of the block. She brought a jar of sauerkraut, her own, sharp with cranberries, and read Ruth's face in the first minute, because Ruth couldn't hide trouble any more than cloth can hide a stain. 2,200! Ruth, you give away 200 starts every spring. Me, Patty, Vicky, half of Elm Street. What if you didn't give them away? At the market, starts go $2, $3. 200 plants, $500. Not 2,200, but it's a start. Donna, I'm not a vendor. I'm an agronomist. 34 years I grew seedlings. For the extension, for people, not for money. That's a different thing. Ruth? Donna's look. A 70-year-old woman who doesn't believe in pretty words. Tyler walks with a limp. He's 14. You're telling me about different things. Ruth said nothing. Biscuit jumped onto her lap, sensing the mood. Cats have sonar for that. And the warm orange weight was the only thing in the room that didn't require an answer. That night, 3 a.m., the insomnia that comes in a mountain winter when the dark is absolute and the house pops from cold. Ruth got up, put on her robe, went to the kitchen. The seedling cups stood under the grow lamp in warm yellow light. Biscuit opened one eye, yawned, closed it. Ruth opened the calculator. If she grew 400 instead of 200. Seeds, free, from jars in the pantry. Soil, compost, plus an $8 bag of potting mix from the hardware store. Cups, bottles, free. Fertilizer, $4. Grow lamp electricity, extra $7 a month, $21 for 3 months. Total, about $35. At $3 each for standard and $5 for heirloom, 400 starts could gross $1,500 or more. Net, over $1,400. Maybe enough, maybe close. By February, the windowsills ran out. 4 windows packed so tight with cups that Biscuit, who'd napped on each sill in rotation like a monarch touring estates, was squeezed into one free patch by the kitchen window between peppers and cucumbers, glaring with offended dignity. Every morning, Ruth straightened starts after the cat. He flattened 2 or 3 each night and shoved cups to the edge. And every morning she told him, "Biscuit, you're crushing my business plan." Biscuit yawned, showed his fangs, lay back down. 400 starts. Donna collected bottles, 5 garbage bags in a week, because in Granby people hoarded bottles in garages, just in case. And just in case had arrived. Ruth wrote costs on the back of the Social Security envelope and stuck it to the fridge with a ladybug magnet Tyler had sent 3 years ago. Seeds, 0. Soil, 8. Bottles, 0. Fertilizer, 4. Electricity, 21. Total, 35. She stared at the number and thought it was the cheapest inventory in the history of commerce. In March, snow still knee-deep but settling, eaves dripping in the afternoon, Ruth loaded 120 starts onto the bus. 3 flats on her knees, because the bus had no luggage rack, and a $12 taxi was 6 plants she couldn't afford to spend on a ride. The Granby Community Market, folding tables behind the fire station, permanent crosswind, a smell that mixed kettle corn, raw honey, and someone's questionable sausage. 8 vendors on a good Saturday. Beside her table, greenhouse starts from a Fort Collins operation, uniform in branded cell packs with printed labels, $1.75 each. Ruth's, in cut bottles, masking tape labels in blue Sharpie, $3 for standard varieties and $5 for heirloom Brandywine hearts. The difference in packaging was the difference between a resume and a work history. One looked better, the other was real. First hour, nothing. Ruth stood mute, staring at the gravel, feeling like a crasher at someone's party. The woman selling crocheted potholders beside her hollered at every passerby. "Potholders, 2 for $5. Keep your hands pretty." And the sound scraped Ruth's nerves raw. She couldn't force herself to say, "Seedlings for sale." Her mouth opened and closed, fish-like, and nothing came out. A man stopped, looked at the cups, looked at the price. "How come yours cost more? Those greenhouse ones are $1.75. Ruth wanted to explain about cold hardening, root development, survival rates, but at a market, nobody listens to agronomy lectures. They listen to price. 4 hours, 14 starts sold, $42. Bus fare, 4. Net, 38. One man, stocky, ball cap, roller bag, stood at the table and said, "Lady, you're selling what Home Depot has for $1.50. Who told you that was smart?" Ruth looked at him and said, "Sir, Home Depot grows their starts in a heated greenhouse at 75 degrees. After you plant them, half will die. Mine are cold hardened at 40 and survive 100%. But if 50 cents matters more to you than your harvest, go to Home Depot." The man snorted and left. The sauerkraut lady at the next table looked at Ruth and said, "Atta girl, don't fold." Home with 106 unsold plants on her knees, the bus smelling of diesel and damp coats, a teenager's earbuds leaking something rhythmic beside her, Ruth thought, if that kid knew what a cup of tomato starts was worth, he'd listen to something more substantial. Although, probably not. She stacked the unsold flats on the mudroom shelves and stood there, hands on hips, staring at 106 cups lined up like small green soldiers who'd lost their first battle. Biscuit appeared in the doorway, assessed the situation with the look of a being who has seen many human failures and found them all unremarkable, then went back to the kitchen chair. Donna came through the gate 20 minutes later. She'd heard from Patty, who'd heard from Vicky, because in Granby, news travelled faster on foot than on broadband. 12 out of 120. Ruth, that's the market. Card table shoppers buying on price. But the Spring Garden Fair at the community centre is different. Real gardeners, people who put their hands in dirt. 2 weeks. I'll drive. Donna, I tried. You tried the wrong audience. That's like selling steak at a vegetarian potluck. Donna sat on the mudroom step. The fair is where your people are. And don't fold on the price. They loaded the Outback, Donna's ex-husband's vehicle, won in the divorce, driven with the caution of a woman who viewed every intersection as a negotiation. 300 starts, every cup Ruth had. The community centre parking lot, 20 vendors, a hand-painted banner, families milling. Beside Ruth, greenhouse starts from Fort Collins in cell packs, $1.75. And a man from Kremling with peat pot starts at $2. Ruth set up her cut bottles, Sharpie labels, and price cards. $3 standard, $5 for heirloom, and felt the same jaw clench as the market. But here the crowd was different. These weren't grocery shoppers. They were gardeners, and gardeners touch differently. They hold a stem the way you'd test a handshake, feeling for the grip. Donna worked the crowd like she'd once worked her mail route, relentless, personal, grabbing passers-by by the elbow. "Ma'am, you garden? Real seedlings here, cold-hardened, not that greenhouse cardboard from Fort Collins." This woman's got 34 years of agronomy. 34. Ruth winced at each pitch, but the pitches worked. Men veered away, women stopped, some walked to the table. The fair changed the math. A woman in rubber boots and garden gloves bought 20 Brandywine hearts. You can't find heirlooms at garden centres anymore. Everything's hybrids. Where do you get your seed? "I save my own, every year from the best fruit. 4th generation, pure line, no crossing." The woman looked at Ruth the way you look at someone who said a magic word. She bought 30 more. By 2 o'clock, 120 starts sold. Heirlooms at $5, standard at $3. About $470. Plus the 38 from the market, just over 500 total. Donna drank tea from a thermos and commented, "Ruth, you made more in 4 hours than I used to make in a week at the post office in '98. Granted, the dollar was different in '98, but still, impressive." Ruth didn't answer. She was counting. 501 down, 1,700 to go. 180 starts left unsold. At 3 to 5 each, maybe another 700 if she could sell them all. But the next fair wasn't for a month, and the starts would outgrow their cups in 2 weeks. A man in a dark blue jacket, embroidered logo, Mountain Roots Garden Centre, a leather notebook, bought 10 starts, quietly, examined each one, wrote something down, and left a business card. Ruth pocketed it without looking. She was too busy making change for 2 women who'd arrived together and were arguing over who'd spotted the Brandywine hearts first. Old Jean, the market's unofficial patriarch, honey vendor, beard like a wire brush, pulled Ruth aside. "Good stuff you got. I know a fella who supplies restaurants in Denver with specialty produce. Want me to connect you?" Ruth felt something quicken. Call him. Jean never called. The contact didn't exist. The 15 starts she'd set aside for Denver restaurants she gave to neighbours, free, because pride wouldn't let her sell them downgraded. $9 of soil and electricity, gone to gifts. Amy called midweek. "Mum, I found a clinic with a payment plan. 1,000 down, 400 a month. I borrowed the 1,000 from a co-worker." Ruth calculated. 400 a month at Amy's salary after mortgage meant surviving on 1,500 for everything. That wasn't figuring it out. That was going hungry. "Amy, don't start the payments. I'll have the money by May. Trust me." "Mum, from where?" "Trust me." Sunday. Donna's Outback. 115 starts in the back, held down with bungee cords and an old blanket. The Oberthal Garden Fair, 20 miles up the highway toward Kremling. April in Grand County. Snow gone but ground still hard. Puddles in every rut with a skin of ice at dawn that children stomped for the crack. They arrived at 8, set up by 9. The fair was bigger than the community centre. 30 vendors, a food truck selling elk sausage, families from Silverthorne and Dillon who drove down the valley for the heirloom vendors. Ruth's table was between a woman selling hand-poured candles and an old man with raspberry canes in buckets. By noon, she'd sold 50 starts. Gardeners here were serious. They asked about days to maturity, soil pH tolerance, whether the Brandywine would set fruit above 8,000 feet. Ruth answered the way she'd answered extension visitors for 34 years. Precisely, patiently, with the quiet authority of someone who has counted seedlings by the 10,000 and lost sleep over frost dates. About $175 by lunchtime, heirlooms at 5, standard at 3. Running total since February, just under 700. Donna worked the crowd like a force of nature. Ma'am, real seedlings here, cold hardened at 40 degrees. Not that greenhouse nonsense from Fort Collins that dies the first time the wind blows. Then the rain came. Not May rain. Warm, forgiving, the kind that makes gardens grow. April mountain rain. Cold, horizontal, with a wind that bent the canopy poles and turned umbrellas inside out. One moment the fair was full, the next it was empty, as though someone had reached down and swept the parking lot clean. Buyers vanished. The canopy leaked at 3 seams. Water ran down the table in streams, and the seedling cups stood in puddles like tiny islands. Ruth grabbed the plastic sheeting she'd brought. Donna held the edges, and they fought the wind for it, rain hammering their backs, the sheets snapping and cracking like a sail in a gale. For 3 hours, Ruth stood in rubber boots and Carl's old canvas jacket, the one that smelled of garage and motor oil and the particular cologne of a life that was over. Cold climbed through the canvas, through the wool sweater, through the flannel underneath, through her skin, and lodged in her knees, which ached with a deep, familiar pain that ibuprofen could dull but never quite erase. Donna stood beside her, coat soaked through, sneezing every 5 minutes, loyal and miserable. 8 starts in 3 hours. $48. A couple from Silverthorne bought 4, running through the rain with their hoods up. A man in waders, actual waders, as though he'd come directly from the river, took 4 more and said, "Hell of a day to sell tomatoes, ma'am." Ruth nodded. It was. At 2 they packed, loaded the Outback, wet flats, heavy, dripping onto the blanket. Drove home in silence, wipers smearing the windshield, the highway shining like hammered tin. Ruth stared out the passenger window at the fields, grey, wet, dirty snow in the hollows, and counted. 57 unsold starts on the mudroom shelves. In a week they'd outgrow their cups, get leggy and weak-stemmed, lose root density. Unsellable. Total earned since February, about $730 after subtracting gas and materials. $2,200 needed, nearly $1,500 short. No more fairs before May. Can't grow new stock in time. The arithmetic had a wall, and she'd run into it. At home, Ruth changed into dry clothes, put the kettle on, sat at the kitchen table. Biscuit climbed onto her lap. Her jeans were still cold, and the cat flinched at the chill, but stayed, because loyalty outweighed comfort, at least in cats. She stroked his back, and the orange fur was warm, and the purring made the room vibrate faintly. And it didn't make things better, but it made them bearable. She opened the phone calculator. $860 earned, $1,340 short. 57 starts that would be compost in a week. The numbers sat on the screen like stones at the bottom of a river, visible, unreachable. She thought about calling Amy and saying the truth. I tried, I came up short. But that would mean Amy would start the payment plan, $400 a month from a salary that barely covered the mortgage. And Tyler would get his rehab, but Amy would eat rice for 6 months. Ruth couldn't do that to her daughter. And she couldn't conjure $1,300 from a windowsill. She sat in the dark kitchen, didn't turn on the light, saving electricity. Biscuit on her lap, rain on the window, the Social Security envelope on the fridge showing numbers that didn't add up. And she felt, for the first time since Carl's death, not tiredness or grief, but anger. Quiet, dense, like bread dough worked past the point of softness. At Carl for dying and leaving her alone with the seedlings. At herself for 34 years of giving away what people would have paid for. At the rain, at the market, at a world where an agronomist with 3 decades of experience couldn't sell a $3 start because Home Depot sold factory ones for less. And at the phone calculator, which showed numbers but no exits. The phone rang at 9. Unknown number. Ruth picked up with a wet hand. She'd been washing the dinner dish, singular, because she ate from one plate and washed it after every meal. Mrs. Lundgren? Ben Yazzie, Mountain Roots Garden Centre, here in Granby. I bought 10 starts from you at the community centre fair. Tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers. I planted them in my test greenhouse a week ago. All 10 took. All 10! My supplier from Fort Collins loses 30 to 40% after transplant. Yours? 0. Do you have any left? Ruth looked through the kitchen window at the mudroom, where 57 cups stood in the dark, invisible, but she knew they were there, each one in its place, the way she knew every object in this house with her eyes closed. 57 starts. I'd like to buy them all, $3 each, and I'd like to talk about next season. Ben arrived the next morning in a white pickup with Mountain Roots on the door. Same blue jacket with the embroidered logo, same leather notebook. He walked the mudroom shelves the way a doctor does rounds, stopping at each tray, bending, touching stems, turning cups toward the window light. He pulled one pepper start, tipped it over his palm. The root mass filled the entire volume of the cup, white, dense, fine-haired, like a small beard. Mrs. Lundgren, I've been selling starts 3 years. I buy from a greenhouse in Fort Collins. Uniform, pretty, branded packs. Customers buy them because they're cheap and look clean. Then in June, they come back, half dead, leaves yellow, no fruit set. I lose repeat business every season because greenhouse stock is packaging, not agronomy. What you grow is agronomy. He opened the notebook to the page with his test results. 10 starts, planting date, soil temperature, watering log, and after 7 days, every plant thriving. The Fort Collins batch, planted the same day in the same bed, 4 of 10 yellowing by day 3. I want all 57, $3 each. That's 171. And for next spring, a fixed order, 300 starts. Tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, we'll work out the varieties, at $3 per start. $900 guaranteed. I'll supply shelving and LED grow lights from a store refit I just finished. Better light, half the electric bill. Think of it as an investment in my supply chain. Why $3? Ruth asked. Level voice, the agronomy instructor tone she hadn't used in years. At the market, I charged $3 and people balked. The greenhouse sells for $1.75. Because at the market, they're buying a plant. From me, they're buying a survival rate. Do the math. Greenhouse start at $1.75, 40% die. To get 6 living plants, a customer buys 10. 10 times $1.75, $17.50. Yours, 6 at $3, $18. All 6 alive. $1 more, 0 dead plants, 0 complaints, 0 returns. For my business, your expensive start is cheaper than the cheap one. Ruth listened and felt something she couldn't name. Not joy, not relief, but recognition, as if someone had said aloud what she'd known for 34 years but never articulated. Because at the extension, it was obvious, the way wet ground after rain is obvious. I've known that my whole career, she said. About hardening, root systems, survival rates. Nobody ever asked. I'm asking. And one more thing, Brandywine Heart. My customers request that heirloom every season. The greenhouse won't grow it, says it's too finicky for commercial production. But gardeners want the real thing. Can you do 100? 100. Minimum. Ben paid the 57 by Venmo. Ruth's phone buzzed. $171. She added it to the spiral notebook she'd started keeping. Market, 31. Fair, 510. Oberthal, 48. Two small sales, 32. Ben, 171. Subtotal, 792. Short of 2200 by 1408. But Ben had said he could use 200 more starts by mid-May, early season demand. 200 at $3, 600. He brought the shelving 2 days later. Metal racks, 4 tiers, and 2 LED panels on timers. The mudroom became a nursery. Ruth walked the rows every morning the way she'd walked the extension greenhouses, checking moisture, temperature, leaf colour, writing observations in the spiral notebook, because 500 plants was too many for her head alone. Donna saw the setup, whistled. "Lord, Ruth, looks like a grow operation." Biscuit, evicted from every windowsill, spent his days on the kitchen chair, climbing onto Ruth's lap at meals with the pointed expression of a being who has been wronged. By mid-May, the 200 were ready. Ben loaded them, cup by cup, 2 hands, no tilt, and paid. $600. Ruth pushed 60 more through Donna's church plant sale at $3 each, $180. 50 through a next-door post Donna's granddaughter helped write, $150. By late May, the notebook read 1861. She sold 45 at the Memorial Day market, $180. Picked up next-door orders through early June. Heirloom Brandywine at 5 each. The word had spread. Another 220. Mid-June, the notebook read 2261. Costs for the whole season, about $70. Net, just under $2,200. She sent Amy the full amount on a Tuesday morning. She called that evening. "Amy, sign Tyler up. Full course, not a payment plan. Money's in your account." "Mum, what? How?" "Seedlings, tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers." 2,200 from seedlings? Give or take. Silence, not empty but full, the kind before a person decides whether to cry or laugh. "Mum, thank you. I don't know what to say." "Tell Tyler his grandma's bringing real tomatoes this summer. Brandywine hearts from the vine. Tell him to get well." By fall, the contract was set. 300 starts for mountain roots at $3, 900. 200 for a garden centre in Kremling, Ben connected her with, 600. 1,500 guaranteed for next spring, plus retail. Ben brought polycarbonate greenhouse panels to replace her old plastic. Start in December instead of January. You'll have 500 by May. 500 at $3 from Ben alone, plus Kremling, plus fares. 2,000 or more per season, on top of Social Security. And the word contract sounded in the mudroom among the empty trays and the smell of damp soil. A word from a world Ruth had never inhabited. The business world, where people pay you for what you know, not what you owe. In Denver, Tyler ran. Amy sent a video. Tyler sprinting across the school parking lot, long-legged, 14, clumsy the way boys are when the world is small and their legs are fast, both legs working, running the way kids run who don't think about running, who don't know that running costs $2,200, earned by a grandmother growing starts on a windowsill in Granby, Colorado. Evening, June, windows open. From outside, Donna's dog, a mower, a truck on the highway, the river somewhere. Ruth on the kitchen chair, biscuit on her lap, orange, warm, torn ear, 11 years old, purring so the room hums. The windowsill, empty. First time in 6 months, not a single cup. Starts are gone, some to Ben, some to fares, some to neighbours. Ruth still gives away a few, but 20 now, not 200. And from choice, not habit. Between generosity and habit, the difference is the same as between a gift and a debt. On the fridge, 2 envelopes. The old one, $7.30 from 3 fairs and a rainstorm. The new one, $1,500 guaranteed. Between them, 1 phone call, 1 man with a notebook, 1 word: survival rate. Mudroom shelves stand empty, trays stacked, waiting for January, when Ruth will pull the jar marked BH25, Brandywine Heart, 5th generation, press a seed into soil, and tell Biscuit, move over, business is starting. Biscuit will yawn, show his fangs, and lie back down. A cat doesn't care what seedlings cost. A cat cares that the windowsill is warm. Cost per start, about 8 cents. Retail, $3 to $5. Wholesale, $3. Profit, $2.92 to $4.92 per plant. Simple arithmetic. Behind it, 3 rules. First, count the real cost: soil, electricity, cups, fertilizer. Without that, you don't know if you're earning or subsidizing your neighbor's gardens from your Social Security. Second, stop confusing generosity with habit. Giving 20 starts to friends is generous. Giving away 200 because you always have is a habit that costs money you don't have. Third, don't apologize for the price. A start cold-hardened for 3 weeks at 100% survival rate is worth more than a greenhouse plant that dies in June. People know it, if you know it first. Write in the comments what you can do, even if it seems like a trivial skill to you: sewing, pickling, baking, or doing repairs. Behind every one of these trivial skills lies real money. And someone reading this right now might finally take the plunge. Like this post so that those who need to see this story right now will see it. And subscribe. Here we share stories about people who stopped being shy and started making money doing what they do best.